when we come into a forum like this and I'm standing here talking to you, I'm actually in your presence. And in this particular space, 20 minutes ago, I wasn't in this space. So if you were looking at this, you would not have seen me. And 2 hours from now, if you were to look at this space, you would not see me. But I'm in this space right now and I'm presenting to you. And I've got things that I'm going to talk to you about. And for that reason, I'm going to encode them. And I'm going to transmit them to you. I'm going to use my facial expression, my hands, my tone, my pace, my tempo. All of these come into this median of communicating with you. When you receive the message that I encoded and sent to you, you will decode it and then see if it makes sense to you and to what relevance it has, and you'll make your decisions based on that. This is the environment that enabling lives in. It is in the environment of communication. And we communicate with somebody else in a way that is by our own choice. So if we are enabling, it's reasonable to say it is our choice that we are enabling. Although we may not be aware of the fact that we're enabling, we're the ones that are communicating. We're the ones that are creating this forum. Hello, everyone. My name is Roy Poyon, and I'm the director of Families Impacted by Opioids. And what we do as a 501c3 is provide education series for family members that are living with somebody who has a substance use disorders. And what we've done is we've taken the entire journey of a family living with this chronic disease and identified the key issues of problems, of obstacles that they're going to likely run into during this journey. And then we did research to find out, what does NIH say about this? What does SAMHSA say about this? What does ASAM say about this? What do the empirically proven clinical papers say about this? And then we boiled it down into 32 learning seminars in a way that families can digest them. Now trust me, a whole life of a family dealing with addiction is a lot of material. You would not believe the amount of work that a family has to go through that we require of them to successfully transition this journey. The study guide that we have here has the 32 learning seminars, and it's about 400 pages, but I do have it as a PDF online for you to download at no cost. The workbook, which is actually you taking what you learned in the study guide and applying it to your life with practical exercise worksheets, is for every one of the seminars. So now you're taking what you've learned and you're saying, this is me and this is how this issue impacts me. But we haven't really done much for you. We've frightened you by telling you about the issue. We've shown how it's dealing in your life, which isn't exactly settling. So we need to give you coping skills on how to, isn't that fair? We need to give you coping skills on how to deal with this, how to determine a solution, make a decision, and design a plan of action. 3 Ds, determine, develop, and design. And that's what's in this book, the 3D coping skills. So with that issue that you're currently learning, you will first learn the objectives, and now you know the topic. Second, you will apply it to your life by doing these worksheets. And third, you will determine a solution, develop a decision, and design a plan of action. You are now set. Or are you? Because really, you don't know exactly what to do. The good news is there's professionals out here, and their whole role is to show you and work with you, like guidance counselors and professional therapists and the police and lawyers and jobs and family services for things like housing, transition from reentry from jail back into the community for your loved one. These elements are there if you know where to go. But more importantly, you need to know what to ask for. And that's why you're in these seminars today, is we're going to show you what the issue is, we're going to show you how it's impacting you, you're going to show yourself, and then we'll determine a solution. You'll develop a decision and design a plan of action at home. That'll be your homework. And then you'll go out and find a provider that can help you with these services. That provider may actually be here in terms of a counselor. It may be somewhere else, but we can help you because we've got a list of different providers here in the community that you can resource to. So let's get started. Probably the first thing that I'd like to do is to show you a video of an introduction source. Sorry, a little administrative work here. It'll come up.
Hello, my name is Roy Poyan, and I am the Executive Director of Families Impacted by Opioids. I'd like to welcome you to today's seminar, which is going to cover the topic of enabling versus consequences. When we talk about enabling, it's just a word. It really doesn't have anything that you can act on. If somebody were to tell you, you need to stop enabling your child, what exactly would you know to do? There's nothing specific about it. So it's germane. Let's get further into something that you can actually do regarding enabling. Enabling has 10 types of enabling. Each of them is titled in such a way that you can identify what it is. There's a paragraph in the study guide that helps you to do that. And then you can apply it to your real life situation in order to start to come up with a solution, develop a decision, and design a plan of action. This is the purpose of the 4 modules involved in this particular seminar. We're going to show you the 10 types of enabling. You should start to stop using the word enabling and begin to use the word exactly what type of enabling you're talking about. I'm going to go through it with you now. There is denial is enabling. Justification is enabling. Allowing substance use in your home or in your presence is enabling. Suppressing your feelings is enabling. Avoiding the problem is enabling. Protecting the family image, that's enabling. Minimizing the situation, oh, it's not that bad, it'll go away, that's enabling. Playing the blame game. If Bill's friends weren't doing drugs, Bill wouldn't be doing the drug. That's enabling. You're giving him an out. Assuming responsibility. This is not your responsibility, it is theirs. So when you assume it, you are enabling. And controlling behaviors. If you don't stop taking drugs, I'm going to kick you out and everything with you and put it on the street. All right? Believe it or not, that's enabling. So what we want to do is to take these 10 from the study guide. You can always go back and review them. Maybe you see somebody who's using a combination. It could be your whole family is riddled with enabling different types of the 10. In which case, each person in the family needs to decide if they are enabling, what type are they enabling. They need to get help, and they need to learn of a way that they can channel that so that it's a positive situation that they're developing and not one that is enabling. So we start to look at the idea of consequences. Well, whose consequences are we talking about? We're not talking about their consequences. Remember, this whole series of seminars isn't really about them. It's about you, the family, and your change and the things that you're going to do that's going to make a difference. It starts with the study guide, okay? And then it goes with you taking the time to do the work in the practical family real-life exercises inside Learning Module 2, the workbook seminar. Then in work number 3 on the same issue, you're going into finding a solution using the model, developing a decision using the model, and then designing a plan of action for each of the issues. That's in the coping skills, the 3D coping skills, which is Learning Module number 3 workbook. And then you're going to go and find someone in the community offering professional services that's a direct match for your family's enabling issue. Okay? Now, you're going to do something that's meaningful. Because in a lot of families, that is part of the environment. There isn't any one single thing that any particular one person is doing that's creating this problem. It's a collaboration and conglomeration and colliding of a lot of different things. It's so confusing. And that's why these education models helps us to say, okay, well, let's take away all the things that aren't needed to be discussed or reviewed, because there's too many. And let's just focus on this one thing. Right now, today, this one thing is enabling. And it's not even enabling. It's one of the the 10 types of enabling. The consequences are yours to bear. If you don't address this, there will be a consequence for it. Nobody's going to get out of this without that. So you need to take time to put into practice and determine which of the 10 types, if any, which of the 10 types are being used by who in the family. Workbook will help you to do that, and then take that and determine a solution for it, to develop a decision on what you're going to do to address the issue of enabling. Let's say it's protecting the family image. Well, there's lots of things that people will do, lie and adjust schedules and really kind of dress up the issue so it doesn't look like it's an issue at all. And in doing that, you're enabling them. So if you need help, get a family counselor that is practicing Bowen family therapy, as we learned in our previous seminars, and or multidimensional family therapy or multi-level family therapy. But one that's recommended by SAMHSA, and you can look it up on the internet. You can type in SAMHSA and then family therapy, and you can read everything that the real people with the real science have determined effectively works, empirically proven. That's what we're doing here. We're bringing this forward. So if we're talking about enabling, we're talking about family therapy. The two go together, with you in the middle taking advantage and being the benefactor of the time that you're spending to do this. I want to welcome you to the new change, which is now you're not going to take this anymore. You're not going to stand for people enabling this situation to continue. This is going to be the turning point for you. I want to wish you the best of luck, Godspeed. Remember, there's a whole bunch of people out there that can help you. And you need to first determine what's going on and then go seek their help and then respond.
It's important for us to know.
Hello, my name is Roy Poyan, and I am the Executive Director for Family.
It's important to note that nothing here is something that you're going to go out and act on, okay? You need to take this information as a precursor to going out and getting a professional involved. And then with them, they'll create a plan and they'll fill in a lot of the blanks, because there's no way in 45 minutes we can help you to adjust something as significantly and entrenched as enabling is. Matter of fact, all these topics are that way. None of these topics you're going to be able to do that. Childhood trauma, I mean, now the reason that we say that there's a sense of urgency is if this is drugs, fentanyl is in everything. It's in marijuana, it's in cocaine, it's in Adderall, it's in Xanax. And this fentanyl is it's a chemical compound. 2 grains, the size of 2 grains of salt will kill you. 2 grains of salt, if I had a salt shaker. This stuff is coming over the border in kilos. And the question I'm often asked is, well, why is this happening? Well, before we had a kilo of heroin for around $6,000, street value around $84,000 once we broke it down, cut it, and put it in the streets in little baggies. And somewhere on 55th Street sold it, okay? Probably through a local gang. So the supply chain's very like fluid. It's almost like 7-Eleven. They know when the truck's showing up and they know where the audience is and they move the product. Fentanyl cuts a kilo of heroin into around 240 kilos. So for that $6,000 bag, kilo of heroin, you buy a 5,000 kilo bag of fentanyl and you cut it with the heroin. Now your heroin has an extended, volume. Now the street value of that, 6,000 with the fentanyl at 5, so now you're around 11,000, is $1.4 million on the streets. The drug cartels have to launder that money, okay? They can't just take the cash and go spend it. They have to put it through a legal entity. That means there's a whole bunch of pizza shops and, Bank of America, and everybody's involved in this. This isn't going anywhere. The families have to defend itself. Don't count on the establishment. It's going to take, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to untrench this because of the kind of cash that's involved. But we can do something about you. And remember what we said at the very beginning of this presentation? We have a choice, and the choice is ours. Let's get smart on what our choices are. So at that time, we can actually do something. Okay, we're going to continue our Getting Smart part by looking at the materials that are sitting in front of you. if you would refer to this, and I'm going to actually get you involved now. I'm going to have you take a paragraph and read it. I'll start us off, and we're going to go through the definitions of the 10 types of enabling. The first one is it denial? Denial is one of the primary behaviors that families adopt when they learn that their loved one is addicted to drugs. They refuse to accept the reality that their family member has a substance use problem. They convince themselves that treatment is not necessary, and the addict will know how to control their drug or alcohol use. If that applies to you or somebody you know, put a check mark next to it, okay? Would you read the next one? Is it justification?
Justification and denial work hand in hand. Families often reject the problem, making up reasons to justify their loved one's addiction. For example, a family member may feel it is fine for a loved one to use alcohol or drugs to cope after a stressful day at work. Parents may also believe that the substance use is only temporary and will stop after the change in lifestyle, such as a college graduation.
Put a check mark. Put the name of a person, family member or friend that you think is doing this. This is your worksheet. It's confidential. You take it with you. Would you read the next one?
Is it allowing substance use? Family members may think that they are controlling the situation if they allow their loved ones to use drugs at home. They may even consume drugs or alcohol with the addict to manage their intake level and to make sure they gravitate toward home when using instead of more dangerous locations.
So we'll hear this very often. I'd rather he shoot up upstairs in the bedroom where I can keep an eye on him than down in a crack house on West 176th Street or East 176th Street, wherever you are. It could be right here in Brunswick. It's a shoot-up house. You don't know, really. I mean, we think we're aware of like the seedier sides of Brunswick, and then we find out it's right next door. And it's just jaw-dropping when we find this out, but it's true. Next. It's suppressing feelings.
Oh, okay. Not expressing your concerns about addiction to a person you love gives them a reason to keep using. In some cases, substance users dismiss their family's fears by reassuring them that they will not consume drugs or alcohol. When an addict dismisses these fears and concerns, it may encourage family members to keep their feelings to themselves.
Hey, she's not going to say anything. I'm going to continue to do it. She's sitting there thinking, I'm just getting torn apart inside, not saying something. She needs to be educated. She needs to say something. She's enabling him. She may not realize that. If you would, next, Becky.
By ignoring the problem and not confronting the substance user, family members may feel that they are keeping the peace in their home instead of giving their loved one proper treatment. The family focuses on keeping up appearances to make more worse.
Very good. We're going to flip over the page. And number 6, next.
Protecting the family image. The stigma of substance use is ever present. People may be ashamed of their substance-using family members, leading them to portray the person in a falsely positive light to friends, coworkers, and acquaintances.
That's a biggie. We said that. I mean, sometimes we have denial, justification, and protecting the family image. And it's up to the therapist to break down. The family system is broken. It takes a family system model in therapy to kind of untangle it. I want you to know that when that gets untangled, it creates an environment for the person that's in addiction that is just phenomenally helpful. It's what we can do while we're watching them go through rehab, while we're watching them struggle with finding a job and recovery and not listening to those cravings that are going on in their head. And then all of a sudden, you know, in comes Barbara that says, oh, I think you should be able to drink. He works hard for a living. It's like, oh, gosh, I can't believe she did that. Well, she doesn't mean anything by it. I mean, yeah, but, okay, well, let's get her to the class. And let's her realize that she's really kind of disrupted the family system by doing that. If a family goes through multidimensional family therapy, empirically proven therapy model, you have the opportunity to reduce relapse by 65%. This is a relapse situation. This whole industry is based on relapse. Okay, the treatment center gets him and they detox him. 7 days later, he goes into either a PHP or some kind of inpatient or possibly an intensive outpatient program. 18 weeks later, they get discharged to aftercare. Their mind is still craving. They're in only the first year of recovery. There are 3 phases of recovery. Unless they reach abstinence of 5 years, and they do that, they will drop to less than 15% likelihood of relapse. You and I are at 15% likelihood of relapse. You only have to take this drug twice before you're addicted to it, okay? It doesn't take an awful lot to get you there. So with that in mind, we're sitting there saying, so what's available for them during that 5 years? I mean, let's face it, they got to carry themselves through life for 5 years with the raging. Go ahead and use it. Go ahead and use it in their mind. Their mind's been rewired to pleasure. And you want that dopamine rush, and we'll learn about that later. But the fact is, they chemically cannot listen to the frontal cortex, which is where logic and judgment reside. It's being overridden. It's rewired. So what are we doing to help? As a family, we can set an environment. With a therapist, 65% if the family members go into therapy. Isn't that something? That's good news, because what I just said is we could cut the opioid epidemic in half if family members would go get therapy, because that creates this recovery environment. Okay, minimizing the situation. People surrounding the addict may lighten the issue by convincing themselves that the substance user could be doing worse. They treat the addict as a phase that will improve over time. And patience. It doesn't improve over time. Time is not your best friend here, okay? Time is of the urgency. In a way, what we see is in the family, we see the other children starting to go into depression over their brother's addiction. We see cutting and abusive behavior to themselves because they're so upset over what's going on. We watch mothers lose their jobs. We see refinancing of houses to the point that, oh my gosh, he's relapsed again, and we're all out of money. This is the 3rd relapse. We start off by sending him to Palm Springs for $75,000. And now, 2 equity loans, we're not really able to help anymore. And that's not what a dad wants to say to his son, who's basically dying and runs every time he sticks a needle in his arm to run into fentanyl. And this could be his last time. So I don't need to add in the emotions to this dialogue, but enabling is very important. It seems like it's just a word, and we said in the very beginning, it's a choice that we're making in the environment that we're setting up that we could be doing a lot better with if we just knew which ones we were doing, and you will. Playing the blame game. Thank you.
Adopting negative attitudes towards substance users only pushes those struggling with addiction away. Blaming or punishing individuals for their substance use alienates them from their family, which may result in destructive behavior.
It's amazing. If Billy would just stop using, we wouldn't be in this situation. We need to move. Really. That's not, I mean, yeah, it's a contributor, but you saying that, you just enabled him. You gave him an out. It's his friends, not Billy. Assuming responsibility, family members may be inclined to take over regular tasks and responsibilities of the addict to prevent their life from falling apart. Instead, assuming responsibilities and providing money to the substance use removes accountability and also allows them to fully indulge. I was just on the phone the other day with a person that said, I've got a neighbor and she doesn't get it. She's totally supportive. She's giving him money. She drives him to the dealer. And it's just like, oh, she needs to be in this course. And I feel for her. That's a heck of a place to be. She's got a long way to go. She needs family therapy. Exerting control on their controlling behaviors, exerting control on substance users may worsen their addiction. Constantly threatening the addict as inferior or placing numerous restrictions on their lifestyle may drive them to a family, further from the family unit. If you do this one more time, I'm going to take everything you own and you're going to the streets. I will not put up with this in my house. Whoa. Well, for one, for the people that are in mental health counseling, you just jumped over a whole bunch of 5 stages of change. and you're expecting way too much with that statement. That's a controlling behavior. Now he can say, "To heck with you, I'm going to use, you don't love me, and I got you to blame for it now. You just enabled them." So we can do better by learning more. I'm going to play this this presentation.
When we look at enabling as a part of the family dynamic, we look at it more as a family member by family member situation. Sometimes the roles that family members use, as we described earlier in the seminars, can almost lead to enabling. But we have to be careful, and that's a self-reviewed position that each family member needs to take on and hold themselves accountable to. What is not productive is for other family members to look at one of the family members and say to them, "You're enabling and you need to stop it." Well, for one reason, to just say that you're enabling leaves out the 10 types of enabling. You're not being very specific. So they're not going to know what to change. Number two, if we're really going to be productive, that's going to be best addressed in a session with the family therapist who can individually, by each family member, help them to identify and define what it is and then create a plan that would create and bring about change, and then a way to notice whether or not the change that has taken place was meaningful and helpful. So what we're not going to do is become the police force of enabling. That's not productive. But for a good, strong family dynamic in a positive and helpful way, we should be having these dialogues with our family therapists, both in a group and individual sessions, so that the best of what we have to offer is not obstructed by the fact that we are doing what's good, but then at the same time enabling to do what's bad. That's very confusing, and it creates for a very unhealthy recovery family environment. So from our literature, the study guide and workbook, we've identified the different types of family member enabling, and that's a helpful tool. Keep that on hand, because it's going to help you to be able to notice what it is that you're doing or what somebody else is doing in the family in order to help them with your family therapist to create a corrective plan of action that can be monitored as to that family member's success in ceasing their enabling statements or behaviors. So the whole concept of how to identify the enabling and the steps to change, to create change in enabling, are first started with what is enabling. And we draw you back to the critical part of there are 10 types. So in other words, let's stop using the word "you're enabling" or "it's enabling," and let's start using exactly which type of enabling we're speaking about. And the study guide and workbook helps us to identify that.
Hello there, I'm Dr. Paul Newton from Expert Author Press, and I have Candace Platter here, internationally renowned addiction specialist and author of the award-winning book, Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself. She's founder of the Candace Platter Family Addiction Therapy Program, and she simply is a thought leader in the area of ending addiction in families. You're going to want to keep watching if you have an addict that you love, if you want them to stop their self-destructive behavior, and if you want to get your life and your family back. Welcome, Candace. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Paul. Good to be here.
And I'm really looking forward to digging into your unique approach to working with families and working with addiction. And what is that one key that really gets success in your program where others seem to fail?
I think there might be a few different keys, or maybe there's one and there's a few keys in the main key. But I talk a lot about enabling and about how an enabled addict just doesn't recover, because really, if you're being enabled, why should you change anything? So I talk about how there are different ways to enable somebody, because it isn't always just money. But within that, you know, I talk about choice in addiction. I talk about how families can start to come out of their own comfort zones in terms of how they've been interacting with their addicts, so that their addicts can start coming out of their own comfort zones. And it just all seems to flow together.
Okay, and the concept of enabling, that seems to be a really hot concept in the area of addiction, and people seem to want to know, like, how do I stop? But why don't we, before even going there, talk about what is enabling?
Enabling is when you are doing for somebody else what they could and often should be doing for themselves.
And how does that look in addiction?
Well, there's a number of ways that people enable, strange and surprising ways, actually. I mean, the most obvious one is that you're giving somebody money. You know, the person in your life who's addicted might come to you and say, "Hey mom, hey sis, you know, can you lend me 20 bucks? Well, 20 bucks doesn't seem like too much money, so sure, here you go, 20 bucks, go get a coffee and a muffin, right? But we know with an addict where that money is going. It's either going to drugs and alcohol, or it's going to compulsive shopping, or it's going to gambling, or it's going to something that feeds the addiction. So we don't want to be doing that with addicts. But another, you know, one of the things I've seen is that a family member will actually drive their loved one to the dealer or to the liquor store, because their rationale is, at least I know where they are. They're safe with me in the car, in the seat next to me.
So I'm just trying to understand, because you're saying enabling is doing something for someone that they should be doing for themselves.
Well, yeah, I'm giving you different examples
Okay.
from that. But to come back to that, often what happens is that families will allow addicts who are in active addiction to live in the family home, and they're not asking them to contribute to the rent for the home or the mortgage. They're not asking them to contribute to food. So, you know, they're not buying their own food. Often they're not cooking their own food. They're not preparing anything. They're not doing anything in the home. They often have their laundry done for them. They're not paying for any hydro for their long hot showers. You know, it's that kind of thing. Sometimes they're allowed to borrow the family car, even though the family might know that they're driving under the influence.
So they're getting a free ride, and they're not contributing, and they're not playing by the rules.
Well, and they become what we call entitled, and they start to feel like, you know, you should be doing this for me. Why should I have to pay for anything? So that's kind of a feeling of entitlement.
Okay, and entitlement in a family can be really destructive, I imagine.
In many ways, yeah.
How does that show up?
Well, when an entitled addict, and when I say addict, I'm talking about any person in any addiction. So it could be alcohol, could be drugs, could be gambling, could be gaming, could be shopping, could be anything. But when an addict is the question was when it's entitled, when the person is entitled, what does that look like? Okay, so an entitled addict often gets very angry when the word no is said to them. That's the word they least like to hear, is no. So I've seen it happen that when they hear a no, they punch a hole through the wall, or do something, they steal from the family, or, you know, they unplug the TV and they take it to the pawn shop, or that kind of thing happens. But they expect that every need is gonna be met because we actually do teach other people how to treat us. And when we've taught an addict that we will do everything for them, they expect that everything will get done for them.
So there'd be a lot of fear in that family around the behavior of the addict, I imagine.
Yeah, when the addict gets angry, it's kind of like the Hulk, you know, the buttons pop open, the clothes go off, right? It's kind of like the Hulk. And so that's a really good point, because the loved ones, in most cases, especially if you're dealing with an addict who's using mind-altering substances like alcohol and drugs, most of them hate conflict. This is the thing that they want to avoid more than anything else. And that's how this whole system gets going. So they say yes when they don't mean yes, but they'll go along to get along because they don't want the Hulk. They don't want the hole punched in the wall. They don't want anger spewed at them. So they people please, and this just keeps the whole thing going for a long time in many cases.
So I imagine a lot of people that you see know that they're enabling and they want to stop, but it's too scary. What do you do?
Well, it's interesting because most of the people that I talk to now who have contacted me for help, the first thing they say pretty much is, I know I'm enabling, but we know we're enabling, but we don't know what else to do. And the truth is that they don't know what else to do because there just isn't a lot of help out there for the loved ones. There's a lot of help for addicts, lots of help, but there's not help for the loved ones. So they honestly don't know what to do until somebody like me says, this is what you need to do.
So where would I start? Like what would I do if I was helpless, or feeling helpless, and my hopelessly addicted loved one, son, daughter, whoever is doing
Out of control,
self-destructive things?
just out of control.
Yeah, and where would I start?
Yeah, well, you want to try, I think reading this book is going to help you a lot. You're going to probably see yourself on a lot of the pages. So I would say do that. And you want to try to work with somebody like myself who knows how to help you, because a lot of alcohol and drug counselors don't know how to work with families in the way that really families need to be worked with. In fact, in most rehab centers in North America anyway, the family is hardly worked with at all, if at all.
And
So
if you were to give like one piece of advice to family members in how to stick to their guns in terms of not enabling, what is something that you could recommend?
Well, first of all, families need to get united. They need to be on the same page so that the manipulation from the addict can stop. But they need to be looking at what their boundaries are. They need to, even if it's little tiny boundaries, even if you start with baby steps, there need to be boundaries that are set, that are respectful to you as the loved one, that are healthy for the addict, that are respectful to the addict. And, you know, a boundary is only a boundary if there's a consequence that means something to the addict. Otherwise, I like to talk about the Charlie Brown cartoons on TV, where the kids all have voices and you can understand what they say, but the adults all sound like wah, 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 wah. And if all you're doing is saying, you can't talk to me like that, don't talk to me like that, the addict's gonna start hearing wah, 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 not pay any attention. But if there's a boundary of, you know, I'm not okay with you talking to me like that. If you do talk to me like that, I'm gonna leave. I'm not gonna have this conversation with you. That's a baby step boundary, but that's gonna mean something to the addict. The addict doesn't wanna have somebody turn their back on them and walk away. So there has to be a consequence that means something to the addict, and it needs to be maintained. So boundaries are so important.
And then painful as it is, if they don't stick to it, it's not a boundary.
It won't be an effective boundary at all. As soon as the loved one caves And it's kind of the addict's job, an addict in addiction, inactive addiction, it's kind of their job to keep poking at them until they cave. Mom, can I have the keys to the car? Mom, give me the keys to the car. No, I'm not gonna give you the keys to the car. Give me the keys to the car. And finally, mom says, oh, okay, here's the keys to the car. And as soon as that happens, you know, the boundaries have to be set all over again with consequences that will be maintained, that will make the addict sit up and take notice. So you need to work with somebody to help you know what your boundaries are, how to identify those, how to language them to the addict, and how to maintain them when the going gets rough. Because otherwise, you know, one of my favorite sayings is that if nothing changes, nothing changes.
Well, what did you think about that? It's real. It is so real. I can't begin to tell you how many families are getting destroyed because of those two single unawarenesses, enabling and boundary setting. And if we were just to get, do you know how many families should be here right now? Addiction is around 13% of a population. So Brunswick has around 34,000 residents, which puts us in and around 4,000 people that are suffering in some type of addiction. The typical household in Brunswick is 2.5 members per family household. So we're somewhere, you know, up around 10,000 people should be at this meeting. Granted, we don't have the room for that, but the fact is, we really need to get them to come in and learn. And that is one of the toughest audiences to capture, is to get family members to come out to learn. Because number one, there really hasn't never been academics for them in the past. So why would they go out and look for something that doesn't exist? So we have to meet them in their pain, and you can help in that, okay? Because what we're doing is we're saying to you all, you're now the learning center. I'm giving you 32 learning seminars that you can actually take at home. You are now your own learning center. You don't need me to do this presentation because everything that I did in this presentation is on my website and you can download it, okay, in the comfort and privacy of your home. Now, I'd prefer to do these because they help to educate people that that's there, it's available. I'll also be doing Zooms to help people. I will attend events. I'm going to buy a trailer and show up at high schools, okay? I'm going to meet the families where they are with this education to say, hey, I know you didn't think to look for this, but it's here. And it's really important that you start to learn. So how many times are we going to actually go over the topic of there are 10 types of enabling? How many types of enabling are there? Can you hear this?
That allows another person
Okay.
to continue doing behavior that is harmful or wrong. It can stem from your codependency. It can stem from what feels like love, denial, fear, bad boundaries, and weakness. It includes making excuses, covering up, lying, taking over responsibilities, tolerating unacceptable behavior, and denying the truth. Enabling is harmful because it allows the person to continue behavior that is not good for them, and especially in the long run is going to have negative effects, could even affect the relationship negatively. But what's interesting is when you stop enabling, the person will react in ways that are designed to pressure you to continually enabling. In other words, they want it and like it because they want to avoid the responsibility for their own actions. Here's some of the things that they will do to make you back down. They'll threaten you with it, with whatever they know bothers you. They'll punish you by hurting you in ways that they know really, really affect you. They're going to show anger toward you, withdraw from the relationship, blame you for whatever happens to them. They're going to say, if I run out of money, if I get kicked out of my house, if the marriage ends, if I drop out of school, if I get back on drugs, all that's going to be your fault. They're going to guilt you by telling you that you're hurting them and harming them. They're going to accuse you of being a bad mother, a bad father, a bad wife, a bad husband, bad sister, bad brother, bad friend. They're going to tell you that you're a bad Christian because you're not loving them. You're not forgiving them like Christ told you to forgive. They're going to up the ante by making everything more dramatic. They're going to build coalitions with other people so that the other people will tell you, oh, no, 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 don't do that. That's not right. You have to continue helping them. They're going to do all these maneuvers to manipulate you into backing down and continuing the enabling. It's very important that you recognize the maneuvers and that you resist all attempts to get you back down. The only way that you can get people to be responsible for themselves is when you stop enabling. You will be helping them in the short run as well as the long run, as well as helping yourself.
Can the addict get violent? Oh yeah. In recovery, they can get violent. Should you be scared of them? No. Remember, this is the person that you love, okay? Unless they're in active addiction, in which case they're high at the time. In recovery, they're in control of themselves, okay? They do have this craving that's going on. Let me describe to you what craving is, because I think it's of value for us to understand this when we're talking about enabling. When we measure through PET scans and other sciences craving as a volume, it's measured in like a decimeter, okay, of volume. In order for you to get up in the morning, you need about 50 deciliters to get you out of bed. Go downstairs and get coffee. It fires. It's dopamine. It's a load of dopamine out of a portion of your brain. And so now you're sitting there saying, my boss congratulated me at work. Well, you're up around 100, 125. And the dopamine comes flooding down through your reward system says, yeah, we enjoyed that dopamine last time. Here it is again. I'm going to reward you with great feelings because that dopamine is here, and it was triggered by, the thought that I really liked the esteem that my boss gave me. 125. When you inject heroin, methamphetamines even more so, into your system, you're somewhere around 6,000. So if you were to graphically take the size of a baseball and say, this is, and they did this in math, this is the size of the craving of you when you have gone 3 days without water and somebody put a frosty glass in front of you that was dripping down and said, would you like that? You will do whatever you can do to get that water. Okay? That's the type of craving you have for water. It's the size of a baseball field. Drop the ball in the middle of the field. That is the cravings volume statistically proven out, empirically proven out. Can you imagine that? That's their craving level. So what are we going to do? I mean, well, we're going to try and create an environment that sets off triggers and informs them that these are the things that we can do and can't do for you, and that we're going to allow and not allow. Would you open your books to these pages? We started a little bit late. Do you want to go to the time that we started, or how are you doing with time? If everybody needs to stop at 7, I can do that. Okay, otherwise we'll go to 7:15. That's about when we started. That's an hour. Is that acceptable? Okay, good. Turn to the page that says it's the next part. It's the workbook, and it's actually taken out of your seminar module 2 workbook for this issue. So on this page here where we've got a list of questions, you can raise your hand or not. You can just raise your hand for yourself. Do you often ignore unacceptable behavior? These are ways that you can identify, are you enabling? Do you find yourself resenting the responsibilities you take on? Because you shouldn't be. So, you are feeling this. Do you consistently put your own needs and desires aside to help someone else? Do you have trouble expressing your own emotions? If so, you may want to look at enabling. You're enabling. Do you ever feel fearful that not doing something will cause a blow-up, make the person leave you, or even result in violence? Do you ever lie to cover up someone else's mistake? Do you consistently assign blame for problems to other people rather than to the one who owns and is responsible? Do you continue to offer help when it's never appreciated or acknowledged? Go ahead and flip the page. Now, this is an exercise that you can do at home, but I'll just walk you through what it would be that you would be doing. Under the box, their behavior, write down what it is that is their behavior. Don't write down relative to like addiction or drinking. Just write down what is the behavior. This is a science of behaviors, by the way, addiction, medicine, and everything. We don't have a blood bank that we can run and say, well, he's this much addicted. We actually go by what their behavior is. So you're no different than a psychologist, than a counselor. We all go by what is he doing, and that's what's telling us where we are and what we're experiencing and what we should do for them. So their behavior is a science that a family member wants to start to get used to logging for yourself mentally or on paper. And then the question then becomes, so what would you like to have seen? Well, he left today. He didn't tell me where he was going. My fear is that he went out to buy drugs. But then he got home, and I realized he went out for a big gulp. And it was as innocent as that. But here I am worrying about him, and that shouldn't be. Okay, what was the behavior you saw? Well, you saw him leave without telling you where he was going. And did you have a boundary for that? Yeah, actually we did. The boundary was that he's going to leave the house, he's going to tell me where he's going, so I don't have to worry. Okay, so he kind of broke the boundary, and now you need to go back to that. See why making a record of their behavior in your mind helps you to understand. So what was your action? That's the next box. Oh, well, that matters, because you could be enabling. You might have created that to happen because you did it before, and now he's just repeating something, and he's going to see how far he can get, or she. And then the outcome, okay? Well, the outcome was, I went through another episode of worrying about him when I didn't need to, and this is exhausting, okay? So it's kind of like your outcome. Okay, go ahead and flip the page and answer this questionnaire. And we'll give you 3 minutes to do that. You've all got pens. And then we'll have you score it. I guess for the viewing audience, I should read these, and maybe that would be helpful for them. Number one, do you take steps to cover up the addiction and help keep it hidden? And the scoring would be 1, never, 3, sometimes, and 4, often. You would put a numeric next to that. Do you make excuses for your loved one's addiction or behavior? Number 3, do you avoid confronting the addiction to avoid conflict? You would mark that once again, 1, never, 3, sometimes, 4, often. Do you believe your loved one is just going through a phase? Do you believe the problem will eventually resolve itself without help? Do you handle the responsibilities of your loved one? Have you bailed your loved one out of jail? Have you paid bills for your loved one who likely used income for their addiction? Do you have a parent-child relationship with your loved one, or even though they are your spouse? Do you enjoy the feeling of being needed by your loved one? Are you guilty of giving second, third, and fourth chances? Do you ever participate in risky behavior alongside your loved one? And then score those, and then you'll see underneath it says, if you scored 12, you're doing a great job. 36, you could do better. 48, you should seek professional family therapist to learn how to make changes. Okay, so that kind of is a little bit of a scale. This industry is full of scales. It's full of questionnaires, full of scales. I am a chemical dependency counselor assistant, so I run my work underneath the supervisor of a higher level clinician. And with that, if trained, and trained, there's a lot of training that goes into this, could do group therapy sessions, assessments, some case management, and that all depends on what I'm qualified to do. What you will find in this profession is that when you're talking to a professional, they're likely going to defer and not do what they're not trained to do. And that's very good. That's healthy that you should know that. So if you are asking somebody and you're saying, oh, well, come on, can't you do that? Don't push it. It means that they're not trained and they shouldn't be doing it. Okay, now the next section is the next sheet. So here you're going to start to say, okay, we're going to use what we learned, and in what way am I enabling? What could I do to stop enabling? Yeah, you really, if you are somebody and you're in this session today, I realize that some of you are not here because you're actually dealing with this in your household. But for those that do, this is very important work, okay? And you'll often find in therapy, they ask you to answer questions and write them down because it becomes real to you. It really causes you to think and pause and contemplate. So these 4 questions are of value for a family member that's actually dealing with this as an issue in their home. Okay, in our final concept, we're going to turn to the defining an issue. This can be used at any part of your life. Okay, so this is a life coping skill. It's not related to addiction, certainly not only. But it's got 5 questions with 3 sub-questions to every 1 question. And what I mean by that, it says define the issue. And then there are 3 questions inside of that category. Clearly state what happened or will happen. Identify who is involved or should be involved. And then what would you like to have happen or to see happen? If you answer those questions, you are well on your way to identifying the root cause of the solution that you need, okay? For any problem, I'm saying. So this could be about finances, it could be about Billy not doing his homework, and it could be about, drug addiction. Number 2, how does the issue impact the family? Who in the family does it impact? In what way does it impact? And what is needed to move forward? Step number 3, what steps could the family take to prepare and then respond to the issue? That's important for us to know. So you need to write down what needs to be done and prioritize it. Who needs to be involved, and what would it look like when accomplished? The 4th, who could help and assist the family in their response? How to search for an organization to help, what to ask them, and then what to expect. And then the 5th and final question, what should the family expect to their outcome? Expect as a timeline, expect as an expense, expect as required changes in order for this to be successful. Now, if you answered those, what is 3 questions for each category, go back to the first one, if you would, please, with me. And we'll only do this once, so you get a feel for this process, this model. Do you see right here where out of these 3 stars, there's a 3rd one? That's your first sentence to your solution. Turn the page. Do you see in category 2, the 3rd bullet? That's your 2nd sentence of the paragraph of your solution. See how cool this is? Then you go to the 3rd question. The 3rd bullet is your 3rd sentence in your paragraph to your solution. And you do the same thing for the 4th and the 5th. You will have a 5-sentence paragraph to your solution. Done. Bet you nobody showed you that before, huh? You now have a way to successfully determine a solution to any problem you're going to face in life just by using this model, okay? Now, I'm not going to take you through it today, but we might in the future. There's a model for decision-making and designing a plan of action. And the reason that I'm not going to say that is I've already said it. It's online. I've got a YouTube on it, okay? And it'll say it to you. And it's in this book. This whole book consists of each issue with those 3 coping skills for each issue that you would write down in this book. Childhood trauma, why it's a brain disease, what to do when the police show up, suicide prevention, harm reduction, how to use Narcan. These are all things that the family needs to train themselves on. And that's just 32. I actually started with 180 and boiled it back. So I want to thank everybody. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes.
Please.
Is there any studies being done or have been done about the relationship between kids today that are into the gaming and mom and dad don't have the time or whatever, or kids that are pressured or bullied for some reason, whether it's looks or whatever, do they tend to go quicker to drugs and alcohol and other activities? Or is that just a fabrication, basically, so that, people say, well, that'll never happen, but it does, obviously.
It's a very good question, and it's one that I hear a lot, and I think it's on a lot of our minds. The question was, do we ever see the population that is gaming all the time move more readily towards drugs? And for those that are bullied, do we ever see in that population about 80% of those that are going through drug addiction have had some form of a post-traumatic stress disorder, okay? You wouldn't believe what the population of incarceration is on post-traumatic. Now, what is post-traumatic stress disorder? If you're getting bullied at school, that is post-traumatic stress disorder. It's big. It's very big. The way that they're doing it socially, on social media, it is absolutely devastatingly cruel, the way that they're doing it. So yes, that is real mental distress. And yes, that population does have a propensity to move into finding a way to kind of like soothe that emotion. Most often, they're not getting any kind of family therapy to help them. So I'm not saying shame on parents, but I am saying if you think that your child is going through or has had childhood trauma, I would welcome you to take seminar number 3 on our website for childhood trauma. But also consider, because you're not going to deal with this alone, and that's what it says in the seminar, you need to engage a family therapist. This is very delicate work, and it takes a highly qualified professional to really address these issues because they are so meaningful to this person's life, both now and in their future. So the answer is yes. Now, regarding gaming, I have to say I don't know. I have wondered that myself, and I've started to look into it, but I didn't look into it deep enough. Are you on the sign-in sheet?
Yeah.
I'll do the research and I'll get back with you because I'm interested in the answer too.
One of the reasons I ask this is that today's society allows or enables schools to do a lot of different things. But I don't see where the schools are assessing somebody young enough that they may prevent something. They're always looking for answers afterwards, not how do we handle this?
And my retort, although without getting into politics, is whose child is it anyway? If it's your child, it's your child, and you should be the expert on them. So if you think that they've had, you could see trauma, and now it's your trauma. If she sees somebody get shot in the streets, that's now her trauma. So if you think that your child, it's not just sexual trauma, there's all kinds of trauma, then you as a parent need to look into that and do it with a professional. Because they have a tool called ACEs, once again, an evaluation tool. And ACEs helps you to screen out very quickly whether or not this is something that we need to look closer at. Great questions, thank you. All right, everybody, thank you very much. Once again, my name is Roy Poyon, and I'm on the website. Because you've attended this counseling meeting, I am now accountable to you, okay? So going forward, you've got my phone number, call me, and I mean that. I pick up when my phone rings, and we can talk about what it is that you have a need to discuss. More than likely, I'll help you find the right resources. Thank you, and God bless you. Oh, one other thing. There's always like one other thing. I wanted to leave you with something that is kind of a gift from me to you. It's actually Ecclesiastes 4, chapter 4, verse 12, where in Scripture, in the Old Testament, the Lord said, though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. So consider that you as a family combined with your family is 2, combined with knowledge is 3. This is actually 3 chords banded together. Now you get to choose what color you want of these different colors. Now I put it around my key ring, so I have the chance to be reminded that I'm not alone in the things that I'm challenged by, and that knowledge is important to me. And once you loop it through, you'll see that it has a thread that you can then connect it to the other end. So that's why you do it on your keychain. Some people look at it as the Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Some people look at it as a reminder. You get to decide what types of reminders you have. I still have all the colors. Okay. Did I get everyone? Okay. Well, thank you very much, and God bless you on your journey. And please tell people about this. I can do these speaking engagements anywhere. Thank you so much.